Hello and welcome to our Pivot to Inclusion YouTube channel. I'm Scott Herbst. I am co-founder and chief programming officer of Pivot to Inclusion, and I am here today with Nasiah Cirincione-Ulezi, uh, our CEO and my partner in diversifying and equitizing and including the world and really
That's right.
creating a world that works for everyone. And
Yes.
Nasiah, you got a few things we want to talk about today. You want to kick us off on our topics?
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for starting us off, Scott. It's been a tumultuous past 5 to 6 months. A lot has happened.
Mm-hmm.
I want us to think back to that conversation that we had, that
Yeah,
phone call I got from you, which led to a public conversation about race, which then led to really steps leading to P2I. So today I want to reflect on that, what happened in our evolution and what happened in the world. I want us to talk about where we're at now and how do we keep it going.
yeah.
That's the work, because we don't want it to stop. So let's think about that. Let's think about and talk about everything that's happened, Scott. It's been a lot, you
Well,
know.
here's how it looks to me, if I may. Um,
Hmm.
Initially, there was a huge amount of activity, right? Like
Yeah.
immediately, just in our field of behavior analysis, there were groups going up
Yeah.
of, I think somewhat this group got huge. There's a group called White People Doing Something
I
that,
see them on Facebook.
yeah,
Yeah.
started by behavior analysts, but it's huge. It's got like a
Yes.
group with some tens of thousands of people in it, right?
Yes.
And there was this huge amount, like they started that group, ballooned, and now I think probably participation in that group, they're still doing stuff, but it's shrunk.
Hmm.
More specific to our field, there was a behavior analyst for social change group that started. I really haven't seen much of anything going on around that group,
Yes. Yeah.
and and I think that's kind of how things have gone just generally, where it's like, vroom, right?
Yes.
But then shrunk down.
It shrunk down. And I see it as kind of a natural drift
Yeah.
back to the way it was before. We're not totally
Well,
back.
hold on,
Okay.
because this is why I'm optimistic, right? Like I think if you just look at that, what immediately happened versus what's going on now,
Yes.
you might get a little discouraged, right? Like,
Mhm.
oh, people have forgotten. And honestly, probably some people have. However, the world's different.
The world
Like
is
like
different.
there's some permanent things that have happened. For
Definitely.
example, we've got a business that like
Yes.
this wasn't even on our radar.
Not at all.
And we've got a business, we've got clients, there's people who are actively engaged, maybe not as publicly, but are
Yes.
actively engaging in this conversation, looking at what they can do. There's events still going on, right?
Yes.
Like there's an event this Friday that I'm attending. I think you forwarded it to me, in our field, about
That-
diversifying our field,
That's
right?
right.
That
That's
these
right.
events weren't going on before, right?
I I I agree. I agree. I will definitely say the responding that we saw initially when the world disrupted, it's not at the same intensity as it was. However, there have been some positive changes that is an increase from where it was pre-disruption. Um, what I see is a heightened awareness of what some of our core issues are. Heightened awareness meaning I don't think, especially in my professional life, I ever remember talking so frequently and openly about implicit biases,
Hmm.
uh, systemic and structural racism.
Yeah.
I think we have some work to do, But there is a better understanding of the role of bias as it relates to systemic racism. And I think that has the potential to really produce some positive changes across the board. That alone. Um, I think before, as far as people's understanding of racism, it was pretty much limited to kind of these single intentional acts of hatred against someone. Um,
Meaning that's how racism was viewed.
that's how it was
Yeah,
viewed.
sure.
That's how, and I think we're moving in the direction of having a better understanding of the systemic and structural impact of racism.
I think so. Think
Yeah,
so.
which I am thrilled. I'm thrilled about that. I'm thrilled in the direction that we're moving in. You know, my goal, because I'm one of the people who was doing this work before the world disrupted. And I am one of the people who I continue to work at a frequency and intensity outside of this responding that we saw. So my hope is that we continue the conversation, that we don't let this drift off our radar and get too comfortable. It's an important conversation to have.
Yeah. And I think we're having it. I'm kind of thinking about it in terms of like things tend to move through stages, or you could look at them as moving through stages, right?
Yeah.
And in the beginning there is this like huge activity, right? Um and within that there's a lot going on, right? Like it's almost it I think it would be a little weird if there were still protests going on, right? Like at the level of intensity. At some point, it's kind of like you gotta. The protests are like, oh my god, I'm outraged. I don't know what to do, right?
Okay, from my lens, I think the protesting was valuable.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I also think, for some of us, the protesting it was cathartic. It was it was a release. You
I
know,
think
my hope now is that we just get more impactful. If we need to continue protests, because I imagine there are people who need to continue, I'm good with that. But at the same time, we need that passion and intensity in our systems.
yeah, and I hope that's some of what's going on. I expect that part of it is just people moving on to other things, but some of it is like people moving on to okay, what can I do where can I be useful, right?
Yes.
Because I don't know how useful. I didn't go out and protest. Did you go out and protest?
I did not.
Okay.
I did not go
Yeah.
out and I protested, but not on the streets.
Yeah. Well, you and I did other things, right? Um,
Yes.
middle-aged people things. But
Who are you calling middle age?
I'm calling myself middle-aged. All right. Unless healthcare gets a lot better,
Yeah.
I don't want to live much past 90. So I'm about halfway there. Uh, um, but I think probably a lot of those. So a lot of people have kind of drifted off, right? But I'll bet probably not entirely, right?
Mhm.
In the sense that they're attending to things that they weren't attending to before. But then other people have drifted off and looked like us. We're like, okay, where can we actually be useful, right?
Yes.
And even in the beginning, you and I, you could say it wasn't out in the streets protesting, but what we were up to had kind of the same flavor, where we were like, what do we do? We don't know. Okay, let's have a conversation public. What are we going to talk about? I don't
Yes,
know. We're just going to talk about race, like not very structured, just like a real exploration, right?
absolutely.
Yeah,
But that's it. It was functionally equivalent.
yeah,
That was our protest. And when because I'm around a lot of behavior analysts, as you are, and people were ready and they wanted to do something.
yeah,
So I had to really get people present to the fact that you may not be out in the streets protesting. However, what you can do, are you a scholar? Can you start impacting our field by writing a paper? What are you doing? Are you helping the organization that you are part of really reflect back on its own practices to help discover where you're supporting systemic racism? So, yes, we in our realm, we weren't on the streets, but we were engaging in our activism in a way that was functionally equivalent to protesting.
yeah. And it's almost like it's kind of like the birth of the universe is the metaphor that just came to mind, where at first there's like this explosion, right?
Yes.
But then out of the explosion, things start actually to take shape. And if
Mhm.
you look at how things have taken shape, things have started to take shape. I mentioned our business, but just
Yes.
within our field, right? You and I were part of that group that of state association leaders who meet regularly. And
Yes.
one of the conversations of that group was like, oh, let's expand this group, so not just include these state associations, but there's the Black Applied Behavior
Absolutely.
Analysts, there's the
Absolutely.
Latin Association for Behavior Analysis. That group said, okay, let's get them in here, let's include them in this group, let's start learning from them, and then see how we can partner. Illinois Association. Well, we actually started the diversity committee. I was proud of this
Before we
before George
started it,
Floyd was
let's
killed.
get that clear that
Yeah.
that was, and at the time you were the president of that organization, but that started before the world disrupted around race, and I'm very proud of that.
All
Um,
right. So let's not say that was the result of George Floyd, but I'll bet a lot of the other organizations started thinking about this in ways they hadn't. Illinois, though, did actually. It was right when we were starting conference planning, and it
yes.
shaped how we planned our conference. Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just as you talk about that, there have been a lot more opportunities presented to me. Now, I've shared with you, Scott, I've been in our field for a long time. And there's some people right now who are just realizing, oh, Nasiah's here.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're getting kind of present to what my skill set is, what I bring to the table.
Yeah.
And hey, I can say finally, it's about time for that.
Yeah.
But what I really want to get people present to is just the awareness of, okay, we're lacking something, we need more diversity. That's the initial step. There's so much work to be done, because I don't want to move into the direction of tokenism, just getting somebody here just to be here. And we wrote a paper on that.
Yeah.
you know Tokenism and performative activism destroy our efforts because it's not authentic.
Mm-hmm.
So the work really has to come from a place of, what is it you value and what is it you're willing to commit to? Because if it's just about, okay, we need to get, if your thinking is we need to get Black and brown people and other forms of diversity here in this space, you won't be able to maintain it. People are going to show up in environments, and there's going to be so many other issues that are going to destroy efforts to create diversity, equity, and inclusion. So just the awareness is it's a powerful first step, but the work is ongoing and requires a long-term commitment.
Yeah, and I think that's because I've said for the last however long we've been recording, 10 minutes or so, I'm optimistic. It's like things are different. Things are different. But then I think there is okay, like things have settled down. Now it's kind of like, okay, the intention, how do we grow? Right. And we're kind of focused on that.
We
Just
are.
you and I are in our business, right? Because it's kind of like we started and pretty easily picked up a couple clients,
Mhm.
right? Now
Yes.
it's like, okay, and then learning to work together with the work kind of work we're going to do, how we're going to make a difference for them, uh, working through that. But now it's time to like, okay, let's where our next client's going to come from. What work is that going to take, right? And I think probably like the process we're going through is one that the people who have remained and are
Mhm.
still actually doing the work, like still focused on the work, that's probably I'll bet a lot of them are finding themselves in a similar space.
I'm sure.
Like,
I'm
okay, so
sure.
now that things have like contracted a little, settled down a little, how do we like grow from here?
How do we
Right?
grow? And let's can we talk about that a little?
Yeah,
Why things contract? What is that drift about away from? And I'll call it the conversations about race. My thought is that conversations about race are still difficult and
sure.
and uncomfortable.
Yeah,
Um, and we're human.
for sure. I think they always will be, honestly.
Hmm.
Um, I think they always will be. But I don't think that's bad. It's interesting. You sent me that article about having conversations about race. And
Yeah.
one of the points it made was expect to be uncomfortable,
Yes.
right?
Yes. That's easier said than done, Scott.
It
Easy.
really is. I mean, I think, and this is probably part of the reason why we're business partners. I'm pretty good for a white guy about having conversations about race, right?
Yeah.
And um,
Yeah.
and there's
See,
still like but it's uncomfortable for me. It's not like I'm comfortable having these conversations.
yeah. I will give it to you, Scott. I will give it to you. I think you're good at having difficult conversations. You have the muscle for that. That is your skill set. It's one of the reasons we are business partners. I think uh, it is a skill set. And I think now you have it, and I'm learning how we can teach that skill set to others.
Yeah,
To kind of, I agree. I don't think it will ever be easy. I think we can get it to a point where it's easier and we understand
yeah,
what conversations about race mean for other humans and for ourselves.
sure. So let me ask you,
Mhm.
since we kind of turned the topic of the tide of the conversation to how do we grow from here? What do you see about that?
Well, I personally think I'm always kind of focusing in on myself first. I think one of the ways that I grow from here is continue to look at what my own values are. I am committed to change. I am committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion on a large scale. And because of that, I am committed to taking action that is uncomfortable for me.
Hmm.
That's what I can do. Even between ourselves and our business, conversations are not always easy. I certainly don't want to put myself out there as the expert and the one that has it all figured out. No, I am and you are. We're still doing the ongoing work. We're still looking at ourselves, and that's what I think it takes. constantly kind of reflecting in, looking, because I have much to learn, Scott. You know, and one thing I'm clear on, when we speak in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion, we largely really kind of focus on race and ethnicity, but efforts on diversity, equity, and inclusion transcend race and ethnicity. You
Yeah.
know, um, as a middle-aged person, you know, I have experienced ageism. You know, there are parts of my identity that are vulnerable, and because of that, I really am on a journey of ongoing learning. So I think that's what it is, not just about race and ethnicity, but ageism, ableism, all the other isms that serve as barriers to people living a life with purpose and meaning. And
Yeah.
as a friend once told me, you know, if one of us is oppressed, we're all oppressed. You know,
Yeah.
so we are all in this together.
Totally.
Mhm.
Cool. So I got one more question, I
Okay.
think, before we wrap up. Um, so grading things, I don't know how, I'm looking for a way for like, how do we evaluate what's happened so far? Are we like,
Mm.
um, are we disappointed? Are we excited, optimistic? Are we happy yet dissatisfied? Where do we fall there? Where
You
do you
know,
fall, right?
I can tell you where I fall. I am all over. You know, parts of me, we just elected our first woman of color vice president. That is, you know, it's indescribable. There are no words that I could use to describe what that means for me. Um, we're in an amazing time in our evolution as human beings. So I'm excited. I'm also a little fearful because I want, like I said, to keep the conversation going. As labor intensive as it might be for some, as uncomfortable as it might be, I want to keep the conversation going. In the same breath, I'll say that there has been some impactful changes that I am elated to see during my lifetime.
Awesome.
Yeah. So we have work to do, Dr. Herbst.
We got work to do, Dr. Cirincione-Ulezi, Dr. C.
Yes, we do. Well, I'm glad that we could get together and have this quick conversation, and I certainly look forward to our next conversation. I am going to thank all our viewers and ask if you are so inspired to please like, subscribe, and share our videos. And we look forward to connecting with everyone again sometime soon. And Scott, we need to do a live. I'm in the mood for a live.
Awesome.
Maybe
Let's do a
Facebook.
live.
Okay, let's schedule that sometime
Cool.
soon.
All right. Goodbye, everyone. Nasiah, we'll talk soon.
Okay,
All right.
sounds good.